Hello everyone, Victor Tanzik here, and welcome to the Reddit Railway. Today's destination is r/WeddingShaming, so all aboard! My husband has a very old friend whom I'll call Douchebag, or DB. He was the first in their friend circle to get married and have children. Every year, they all went on a week-long camping trip. He would always come alone and indulge in adulterous activities. The group ignored this outrageous behavior because he told everyone he had an open marriage. This had gone on for several years before I came along and was accepted as normal. However, I wasn't aware of this the first time I attended one of these trips. DB had brought along his newest mistress, and I expressed my discomfort to hubby since I knew he was married, but it seems his mistress didn't know, so she dumped him. I'm guessing she must have told his wife because when we returned from the trip, she asked me about it. I told her the truth and she was furious. No surprise, they weren't in an open marriage. Needless to say, I wasn't DB's favorite person after that. He and his wife managed to patch things up though, and since DB was still important to my husband, he and I had to be polite at social events with the friend circle. A few years later, he became a groomsman in our wedding and caused some problems. He planned to burn an effigy of me at the bachelor party. We were tipped off about this by another friend. I was understandably upset, but hubby thought it was funny. We got into a fight where I put my foot down. I said if this happened, DB was out of the wedding. Hubby countered by saying if he's out, there won't be a wedding. I agreed there would be no wedding if he pulled this stunt. But it didn't happen, and the wedding went ahead. I'm sure it won't surprise anyone to learn DB didn't stop stepping out on his wife. He introduced his newest girl, whom I'll call Hobag, to the friend group. As expected, they looked the other way. However, it seems hubby was the last one of them to find out about her. When he did, he was out with the friend group but excused himself to come home and tell me about it. He was torn about what to do. I wanted him to cut DB out of our lives. He didn't want to because they were brothers by choice, not blood. Hubby and I had some major fights about it because to me, this was all kinds of wrong. Hubby later talked to DB and found out Hobag knew he was married and was all right with it. He didn't want to divorce his wife because of the kids. He had 3 by this point. DB was also smitten with Hobag, even referring to her as his soulmate. Yuck. Hubby and I got into several more fights after this. There was no way Hobag was coming to my home and I wasn't going to socialize with either of them while they were together. We agreed I would be civil if it was just DB, but if he brought Hobag along, hubby and I would leave. The situation wasn't ideal, especially after DB got us and the entire friend group involved in his drama. Everyone was forced to take a side or risk losing decades of friendship. Some of them actually started covering for DB and Hobag. One couple actually said they liked her better than DB's wife. I should point out she didn't know about Hobag, and I never told her. We weren't friends and didn't really speak. Besides, if she didn't leave him the first time, why would she now? I wasn't about to be the messenger who got shot for delivering bad news. I soon began asking myself, if they were willing to lie and welcome Hobag for the sake of DB, would they do the same for my husband if he cheated? I asked him this, and he was offended, saying, I would never behave like that. He would then bring up issues from our past, leading to more fights between us. This deepened my insecurity and made me even more hostile to the friend group. Lie down with dogs, get up with fleas, I said to him. Why hang out with people who think this is acceptable if you don't agree with it? And he would remind me of how long he had been friends with these people. It was a horrible, horrible situation that went on for months. And then the wedding happened. The couple who liked Hobag better than DB's wife was getting married. The bride and I had spoken several times. We were cordial but not close, mainly because she had become friends with Hobag. The wedding happened and it was beautiful. DB, his wife and their children were there. They actually looked happy together, so I thought all would be well. But after taking pictures, the wife and I were chatting. She explained the reception was adults only, so she was going to have to take the kids home because they couldn't afford a babysitter. Of course, DB was going to stay. She was bummed because she was feeling very isolated and had been looking forward to an evening with adults. Then I got a terrible feeling in my stomach, like I knew what was going to happen. Unfortunately, I was right. After the wife left with the kids and the reception began, Hobag showed up as DB's date. I later found out she had been at the wedding the entire time, but stayed out of sight. I will never forget the sight of her sitting on DB's lap. What made it worse was seeing members of the friend circle laughing around them. My empathy kicked in as I realized I had become an accomplice to their lies. I briefly talked with my husband. He asked what I wanted to do. I asked him to wait a few minutes. I went up to dance with the groom, who was very happy and a little tipsy. I asked if he knew what was going on. He smiled and said yes. They had planned for the reception to be adults only, so DB and Hobag could be together. Needless to say, the reception wasn't adults only, as there were plenty of kids running about. You should be ashamed, I said. You two have created some bad karma. I then walked off the dance floor and up to the bride. I told her congratulations and hoped she was comfortable with the karma she was creating. I also told her she would regret what she had done. I know it might not seem like much, but I was probably the only one at the wedding to call them out for their crap. I wouldn't have attended in the first place if I knew what they were planning. The saddest part was I knew DB's wife considered these people friends. She had always treated them like family, and this was how they repaid her. Disgusting. Thankfully, I was right about karma. A few months after the wedding, Hobag got sick of being DB's side piece and demanded he tell his wife about them. Amazingly, he did, and she handled it with more class than I probably would have. She actually asked him, if you wanted a divorce, why didn't you just say so? Truthfully, I think she was a bit relieved. She must have suspected something was going on and was glad to know she wasn't crazy. They got divorced and DB married Hobag pretty quickly. I didn't go to that wedding. I don't think I was even invited. My husband was. He stayed for the ceremony but not the reception. Hubby's relationship with DB wasn't the same afterwards, and I was glad of that. A few years later, DB's marriage collapsed after he walked in on Hobag being railed by another man in their bed. She explained she felt it was necessary and admitted it wasn't the first time she had cheated on him. He was shocked and devastated. He actually tried talking it over with his ex-wife, whom he still considered one of his best friends. He bitterly bemoaned how Hobag hurt him before realizing he had done the exact same thing to her. He apologized with a sincerity that was long overdue. He then apologized to me because he finally understood how crappy he had been. It was a nice sense of closure. It took a very long time, but DB and I became Facebook friends. We haven't seen him in real life in over a decade, and that's okay by me, even though it sometimes makes my husband sad. He divorced Hobag and got remarried. We weren't invited to that wedding. It appears he has grown up considerably in the intervening years. His current wife seems like a lovely person. I honestly don't know her and have no problems with keeping it that way. The friend circle was damaged pretty badly by this whole ordeal. Most went their separate ways, but some stayed together. The camping trip hasn't happened for years, and they don't get together that often, which I am perfectly okay with. But what about the bride and groom whose wedding kickstarted karma's rampage? Well, after 16 years of marriage and one beautiful child, they ran into financial difficulties. The groom took a job in another city where he had an affair that his teenage daughter discovered. The marriage blew up and the bride suffered the public humiliation of being cheated on. They got divorced about 5 years ago. The groom moved further away and doesn't see his daughter very often. Not that she really wants to see him. She was quite angry about the pain he had caused her mother. I only see the bride on rare occasion and we barely talk, which suits me just fine. I still think about the warning I gave the couple at their reception. I sometimes wonder if I caused their marriage to implode by telling them karma would pay them back. I know I probably didn't, but it's fun to think that I did. What goes around comes around. Indeed it does. Like I've said before, stories like these only affirm my position karma is a real force in the universe. That being said, if this were an Am I the Asshole post, I'd be inclined to say everybody sucks here. Douchebag for obvious reasons, but also his friends for enabling and tolerating his behavior. OP was right to think they might cover for her husband if he stepped out on her. I wouldn't be surprised if he had. Speaking of the husband, he's just as guilty as the rest of them. He was willing to let DB burn an effigy of his future wife at his bachelor party, and he couldn't cut him off because they were brothers by choice? Give me a break. And finally, OP also sucks for not telling DB's wife about Hobag. Yeah, she had a point that if the wife didn't leave him before, she might not leave him this time. Except she did. Granted, we have the benefit of hindsight, but still, the only innocent party in all of this is the wife. What a trooper. I doubt I would have been so gracious in her position, so best of luck to her. As for everyone else, they can go screw themselves. And with that, I'll end the video here. Like, share, and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.